1968 Dodge Charger. And I don't think anything on this vehicle is original. It's a complete custom automobile. Number one, the whole drivetrain, suspension was all redone. But they lowered the car also. Plus, they actually modified the roof line. They dropped the roof line down. But I'll tell you some interesting points about Charger in 1968. There was a gentleman in Chicago, Illinois. His name was Mr. Norm. And when I was a kid, I lived 4 blocks away from Mr. Norm's Grand Spalding Dodge. And he really was the guy nationwide that made Mopar what it was in the racing community. They would take your car, put in a dual points distributor, but they would actually even take and modify the carburetor, change the floats and the jets and stuff like that in the vehicle, and they would actually make the car like 25% faster. Norm became very popular with the police car industry. Real interesting point. Back then, police cars, they used a lot of Mopars. They had a slant 6 engine. But as the muscle car industry grew, guys with these fast cars from the factory in the 60s especially would fly away from the police. They couldn't catch them. So they started buying squad cars, Mopar squad cars with the 383s and the 440s in them so that they can keep up with the guys that they were chasing. Interesting story, interesting part of history. Hey, check out RichieZ.com. That's RichieZIE.com. And we have television and radio show. The full Mr. Norm story is actually on the website. Just click on the icon and listen to the history of Mopar racing and Mr. Norm's Grand Spalding Dodge. 1956 Chevrolet pickup truck. Folks, I gotta tell you something. I don't get it. Pickup trucks. Pickup trucks are work vehicles. But I'm gonna tell you something. Anytime you see one going through the auction that is sharp, it usually brings a big buck. And look at this. We walked up here to shoot this truck, and look at the people standing around this pickup truck. The show hasn't even opened yet. These are people with cars in the show, but it attracts people. This industry is so cool, and what you're going to see today in the show is trucks, cars, motorcycles, custom, regular cars, vintage cars. You're going to see it all. But this is a gorgeous 1956 Chevrolet pickup truck. I'm with Jeremy over here. We got a 1964 Malibu. Now, I remember these cars when I was a kid. I was around when these cars came out. They didn't look like this at all. Jeremy, tell me a little bit about the powertrain you have in here.
Sure. The motor in it's an LS3 supercharged, Edelbrock supercharger, makes about 850 horsepower. Everything under the hood's just either custom machined or hand-formed sheet metal, and just kind of disguised everything, kept it nice and tidy, and it's 850 horse connected to a 6-speed automatic trans.
And you'll never run it, right?
Oh, it's a driver. Yeah, this car. It's not a show car.
But you don't run it on the track.
Yeah, it'll be.
You do run it on the track.
Yeah, this car will be.
This guy's as nutty as I am, folks. I mean, he's a guy after my own heart because I love them all. Every one of the cars out here and what people do with them, I love them all. But I'm the one that likes to
drive them, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we do. Our shop, we manufacture chassis for all these classic muscle cars. So this car is actually on a complete aftermarket frame that we manufacture, and it's.
You can't see. I want people to understand our trade and you couldn't put even half of that powertrain you got in there without doing the frame and the underbelly, the chassis. You have to have, I've talked to people for so many years. People need to understand this. You can't just drop a new big block in these cars because you'll twist the frame the first time you get on it. You'll pop the rear end and all of that. So the whole drivetrain has to be completely redone.
Yeah, in this car, it's the complete chassis is manufactured in-house by the Roadster Shop. That's my shop. It's independent rear suspension.
Roadster Shop up north?
Yep. Up in Mundelein, Illinois.
I've been out there. Folks, it's a huge place. I've been trying to get you guys to advertise on the show, but no, you guys really have. I would love to follow a car, do a car on the television show, and maybe we'll be able to do something. But this is a gorgeous 1964 Chevy Malibu. I love black, but why did you pick the black?
You know, the car originally was supposed to be silver. We had a rendering done of it, and the car was in the booth. We were just about to order the paint to put it down, and at the last minute we got cold feet and just thought you just can't miss a laser straight black car. It doesn't get any better than that, other than the headache of wiping it down all the time. But
the one thing about black, it doesn't forgive any sins, so it has to be perfect. Any other color, if you got like a little dimple or something like that, it doesn't show up. Right. But with black,
yeah, black, you can't hide anything. There's no lies, no secrets with a black paint job. It's all right there.
1932 Ford Street Sedan. Again, these cars are being used more and more for customizing, turning them into a street rod, they call it, or even a hot rod. This is a gorgeous automobile. But when you come to these shows, I hope you appreciate what these people do, not only with the car, but also look at the beautiful display they have for the automobile. Actually, there's on the ground, the car is actually sitting on jack stands, and he made the jack stands out of like a rear end and brake drums. Really, really a gorgeous looking automobile. April 15th, 1964. This is the first Mustang ever sold by the Ford Motor Company. It was sold to Gail Wise out of Park Ridge, Illinois. She was a school teacher. In fact, the car, I heard, rumor has it, the car wasn't supposed to be sold for another couple weeks. I think they were going to launch them in May. But she saw this in the back and fell in love with it and purchased the car on April 15th, 1964. Cool part of the story, they had it restored a number of years ago. It's back to the original condition it was when she first bought it back then. And she still owns the car. I have one suggestion for General Motors for the Chevrolet line, and that is to do a Camaro that looks like this, that will sell to the general public. The kids nowadays love the styling, the upper part of this, the hood, the trunk, and the roof of this automobile. This would be the hottest seller you've had for Camaro. So GM, if you're listening, think about what I'm saying. Maybe do it a limited production, but design it like that, and I guarantee you'll sell a lot of them. This is what it's all about. This is how we got started and how this became what it is today, the car industry. We got Cody and Mariah here, and your dad brought you to car shows when you were half our age, right?
Yeah, we went to car shows all over the place. A lot of the ones that we went to were in the city parks, and we'd see the local guys with their cars in the summer, and it was a blast.
Tell us who your dad is.
Well, Ed and Eileen are my parents. That's my father. And this is little Mariah here. And she loves going to car shows. She's probably been to over 100 car shows, and she's only 4, so she loves it.
You know, I see this all the time, and I try to get, like, on camera on that. I want to tell this story because it's got nothing to do with the cars or any of that. It's got to do with a 4-letter word, and that word is love.
Yeah, absolutely.
You show her love, you know, and she loves to be with you.
Sure. Well, it is. It's all about appreciating people's talents and being able to share that with other people. And absolutely, it's a family thing. When you come and you see these people work so hard, a lot of these cars that are done, well, they're done in the garages with the fathers and the sons and the daughters all working together.
Right. And that's the cool part about it. You know, I try to tell people all the time, I love seeing this because I know this is not going to be on the street selling drugs or gang banging or whatever that you want to call it.
Sure.
She's going to be, you know, when we're long gone, she's going to tell someone a story about, I remember when my dad and I did this at a car show.
Right. Yeah.
And that's sweet.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fantastic. All across the country we get to go to car shows, and I'll tell you one thing, the car guys are the most trustworthy guys. The guys, if you need anything, they're there for you, and it's amazing.
I'm going to add to that because you brought up a point in my head, and you go to a baseball game, you go to a football game, you go to a hockey game, you hear four-letter words all the time. You hear guys punching each other, acting stupid, this and that, and throwing things at the whatever. You never see anything like that at a car show. Everybody, you know what? You walk up to anybody here and say, hey, is that your car? Yeah. Where'd you get those wheels? And all of a sudden they're talking for an hour, half hour, 15 minutes. They don't even know each other's names. But it's a magnet that brings nice people together, right?
Yeah, she says.
1963 Nova. God, it takes my breath away. The car is just so spectacular. It's a full-blown custom convertible. Now, they didn't make many. I don't even know if they made Nova convertibles, and I'm from that era. But let me tell you a little cute part of history about the Nova automobile. Number one, Nova spelled backwards is Avon. Novas were made in Mexico back in the 60s. But Nova in Spanish means no go. So the Mexican people, where these things were being made, actually did not want to buy them because Nova means no go. But this is a gorgeous 63 Nova convertible, full-blown custom here at the World of Wheels show in Rosemont, Illinois at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center. 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air, very, very popular in the automobile industry. Back in the 50s, Chevrolet, well, really 40s, 50s, 60s, Chevrolet dominated the sales of automobiles. And just to give you a little piece of information on Chevrolet, 1965, the Chevy Impala dominated the whole industry. 29% of the vehicles sold were a Chevrolet Impala in 1965. 1932 Ford. This is another gorgeous piece of work when it comes down to customizing cars. But you know, really the craze didn't start until the late 40s, early 50s. In fact, I'll tell you a little cute story about the muscle car era and when it started. Everybody says it's like in the 60s, but it started back in the 40s, and there was a gentleman that started it. He was a rum runner, a bootlegger. His name was Junior Johnson, and he was actually selling moonshine. And the feds were chasing him. They didn't really want to even arrest him. All they wanted was their $1 a bottle tax that was put on liquor back then. But he was the one that started the era and really made it go. Look at this gorgeous 1932 Ford. You know, back in the 60s, Comet and Falcon went away when the Mustang hit the era. But this style of the car stayed around. Now, this is a 64 Fairlane, right?
Fairlane, yes, Ford Fairlane. Yep.
This is very rare. They did not make many of these, right?
They made, I believe, 100 in all.
100?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this one here was completely customized for the racing industry.
That's correct.
Now, one of the reasons they did that, they chose a car like this, was because they're very light, right?
That's correct, yes, and they came pretty much totally stripped down. No radio, aluminum front bumper, fiberglass fenders and the like.
From the factory.
Correct.
So they were building, like everybody else back in those days, they were building cars for the gearheads, for the muscle car guys.
Exactly.
So this thing was pretty fast from the beginning, but you guys modified it a lot, right?
Oh, yes. This is totally modified to run in the Superstock B class, and it will run under 9 seconds. So
you actually do run this thing.
we do. We get it out several times a year. It's a lot of fun.
What does it do in a quarter mile?
It'll go, fastest it's been so far is 888.
888.
Yes, sir.
That's quick. That's quick for an automobile, especially something out of the 60s with the drivetrains from back then. Thank you for spending some time with me.
Thank you very much.
This 1931 Ford Model A four-door is really cool, but if you're looking at the hood ornament right now, they called it the mascot back then, but you can see there's actually a thermometer built into the mascot, so it would let you know if you're overheating while you're driving the car. The thermometer would actually turn red. So if you knew your car was running hot, you'd pull over, either add water or let it rest back then. But this is a very, very attractive car. 1931, I don't think they had kept this body style for long, but it was just it's really, really different than the other Model A Fords after that and even before the 1931 that you see here. Really a nice looking automobile, all kept original. Boy, I tell you, they really made some nice cars. An interesting point, too, that I want to bring up, back then, you heard of Dillinger, the famous bank robber. He actually wrote a letter to Henry Ford when he'd steal cars. He would always steal a Ford because the Fords were faster than the police cars out there. So he was able to make a getaway quicker with a Ford automobile than anything else on the market. 1959 Chevrolet Impala. Gorgeous automobile. It's the last year, well, 60 was the last year of the wings on the Chevrolet Impala. This was kind of a Harley Earl trademark in the GM line. But a cute story has it, a rumor has it, that these cars, if you went into a dip like this in the road and you were doing over 100 miles an hour, because of the wings here, the car would actually go a little airborne when you went through the loop. Gorgeous 1959 Chevrolet Impala. I kind of like the idea of they call this the cat's eyes. Now, that was a trademark also where they would put 3 taillights on all the Impalas back then. So there's actually 3 bulbs back here in this light. 1969 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. These were very, very popular cars. This one is actually a street machine. This is a real hot street riding car, I mean, for racing and stuff. It's got the tubs in the back, the high performance engine in it, and just in a real attractive color combination, I think, with the car. I've never seen the kind of a chamois colored striping on there. It's usually black to match the interior. I like the way this looks. 1969 Mustang. By the time 69 came around, Mustang was an icon already. And again, well, let me tell you a little bit of history about Mustang, but we got a few Mustangs here today, some real interesting ones. This one is a gorgeous street rod. Mustang was originally designed to be a economy car. The Ford Motor Company came up with the idea of making something cute, and Mustang was the car back in 1963. But again, the car was so light, muscle car era was hot, and guys took Mustangs because they were so light and turned them into hot rods, street rods, racing vehicles. This is another gorgeous, it's completely customized, this one here. the whole drivetrain. One of these days we're going to do a show around the drivetrains and the frames and all the other stuff with the vehicles. This one's actually got tubs in the back so they can put the wider wheels on. But another gorgeous car here at the World of Wheels show. 1969 Ford Mustang. 1969 Buick Skylark. Boy, I got some history to tell you about Buicks and myself. And one of my early cars was a 64 Skylark with an aluminum block engine in it. But my brother actually bought a 69 Super Sport, Grand Sport they called them back then. But this is a gorgeous 1969 Buick Skylark. You don't see that many of them anymore, especially with a convertible top. Convertible tops are very, very rare. But completely customized, gorgeous automobile here at the World of Wheels show in Rosemont, Illinois. You know, this is one of these cars that's I call a sleeper. You come to a car show and you cannot believe what you see. This artist painted this beautiful portrait of a gorgeous female. She looks like J-Lo, basically, on the hood and the trunk of this vehicle. Now, when you look close at what he did, it's amazing. I was president of Chicago Windy City Artists for 5 years, and the detail in this particular portrait is amazing. It really, really is. I wish the owner was around because I'd love to talk to him and find out how long it took him to do it. But I say you don't even need any of the heavy metal flake or any of that. The leopards in the background. That portrait is just so picturesque. 1940 Ford, very, very attractive automobile. You know, you don't see cars like this a lot at these shows unless you go to a Ford show. But I love what they did with the display here. It's a Ford dealership out of a different state background. And that's what the dealership actually looked like back in 1940. But this is a gorgeous automobile. 1965 Chevrolet Impala Super Sport. This is a very interesting automobile when it comes to Chevrolet. This car here in 1965 was only 8 years old. The Impala brand came out in 1958. But what's really unique about this one, this car sold 1,046,512 Impala, Chevrolet Impalas, 2-door, 4-door, Super Sports and convertibles, everything. But they sold of just Impala 1,046,512 cars that year. Nobody has ever broken that record yet of one brand, one car name selling that many automobiles. So very interesting car, very pretty. 1958 Chevrolet Impala. This was the first year that Chevrolet came out with the Impala. Now this car here, very interesting because back in 1958, muscle car and racing and all of that was just beginning. You could get one of these with a 409 engine in it. If you ended up with one with dual quads, which they had from the factory, you got a rare one. If you have one with fuel injection, which they had back then, you have a very rare one. These cars I've always loved from when I was a little kid, but now the price, I remember 10 years ago they were doing maybe 20, 30,000. A sharp, pristine 58 Impala today will bring in excess of $100,000. If you have a convertible, that's even more money. I've seen them go through the auctions at $150,000. It was the first year of the 3 tail lights And that was a thing that Impala carried on for many, many years. 3 consecutive taillights on each side. Gorgeous automobile, the 1958 Impala. Body style all by itself. There was not another year that was even close to this. If you look close at the car, the first year, the double headlights. But if you look at the front end, it has straight design style from the Corvette automobile also. If you'd like to advertise on the Chicago History and Automotive Heaven television and radio show, you can contact me at 312-841-2560. Email me at rautomd@gmail.com.